Welcome. Welcome to the first Sockmatician podcast episode of 2017. Happy New Year and welcome back. My name is Nathan Taylor, also known as Sockmatician on YouTube, Ravelry, Twitter, Instagram and Periscope. Why not hit the subscribe button? Why not, if you're enjoying this video, hit the like button, because that shows other people that you've liked it and that can encourage other people to come and view as well. So let's get all of that thirsty stuff out of the way. If you're enjoying what you're seeing, if you've enjoyed the content that I've been putting out over the last couple of years, then please, if you've already subscribed, do hit the like button and share where you can. I'd really appreciate that. Thank you very much. And the reason I'm saying that is because I have a New Year's resolution, as I'm sure many of you do as well. My New Year's resolution is to really invest as much as I can in growing the Sockmatician brand. I want to make a real go of this as myself, as a designer, as a teacher and tutor. I've got a lot of teaching coming up over the next 12 months, which I'm really excited about. But also as a YouTuber and trying to sort of feed all of those things in to each other. And on that note, before we go any further, I just want to sort of explain a decision that I've made. When I set out doing this podcast, it was, as I've said many times before, all about finding a way of engaging with people and reaching people that I wouldn't necessarily have the opportunity to get in touch with. And that's been brilliant, and that hasn't changed at all. You will have noticed, I have no doubt, that my podcast episodes, not my tutorials, but my podcast episodes have now got adverts at the beginning. And I took that step partly to do with this sort of growing my brand and trying to make my Sockmatician income a viable means of supporting myself. And I agonised long and hard about it. It can be really annoying when you've got adverts to skip through and things like that. Well, you can skip. But I thought I'm always going to keep my tutorials ad free. I'm not going to worry about that in any way, shape or form. That will always be the case. So anytime people want a quick 5 minutes of how to, then they shouldn't have to sit through anything at all. But I think these are long episodes. What's another 30 seconds between friends, hey? Really? So I took the decision to monetize it. I don't know how much I may earn from it. I don't know if it'll be worth doing. I may reevaluate this over the next 12 months or so and see how it goes. But I thought, well, why not? It is an investment of time, as I'm sure all other podcasters who watch this will absolutely know. It's not just sitting down here waffling on for an hour and a half, it's also the editing and the preparation. Let's not be under any illusion. It might look like most of the time I'm flying by the seat of my pants and I just sit here and burble onto you. But there is a lot of preparation, drawing together everything, deciding what I want to talk about and all that kind of stuff. So, and the editing takes longer than the recording process, and then there's all the uploading and the getting the graphics together. And I am not whinging in any way, shape or form. I do this because I really enjoy it. But I thought, if I can get a little bit of something back, and it's not costing you anything, and that's the most important thing. I don't want to charge people to watch. I don't have any problems with other people that do. I think it's a great way of doing it. It wouldn't work as a business model for me. But I thought, well, if there are people advertising who will pay YouTube to pass some of that on to me, I'll have a cut. As I say, it's probably going to be pennies. It's probably not really worth it. However, a little favour, you're under no obligation to do this, but I just thought it's so easy to go, I hate this, skip. If you can bear to watch the advert for its entirety, that will be a little way of thanking me for the time that I put into preparing a podcast episode. And there's no guilt involved in that. I won't know. I'll never know for sure. But if you can watch the advert, then I might get 2p rather than a penny. Mounting up over the course of a year. So that's just a little bit of an update on why I've done what I've done, and I'm hoping it's not going to put people off. I didn't do it for a long time because I know it can be annoying, and I wanted to make sure that I was focused more on reaching people and building up a sort of a loyal fan base, if you like. That's a horrible word, isn't it? A loyal group of people who watch and enjoy watching. And I didn't want to put people off, but now that I've got you, here come the ads. No, that's not true. There's no more ads. That's it. So, it is, as I say, the first episode of 2014. It is, I forget what date it is. It's about the 10th. I haven't even looked at anything. What date is it? It's the 11th. It's Wednesday, the 11th of January. It feels like an awfully long time since the Christmas episode, and Christmas now seems like an awfully long time ago. I was incredibly busy over Christmas, as I think I hinted last time, with the new job at the South Bank Centre, which is now finished, where I was working at the Royal Festival Hall, dealing with all the ticket agency bookings for $1 Million Quartet. The show went really well. I saw it. I took Ben's parents and Ben to see it on New Year's Day. And it's a jukebox show. It's very much, it's all the old rock and roll hits that people will know, and that's not usually my style of theatre at all, but I really, really enjoyed it, much more than I expected to. The guys who play the quartet themselves, so the guys who are Jerry Lee Lewis, Elvis Presley, Carl Perkins and Johnny Cash, really very talented instrumentalists, wonderful musicians. And that was a delight, and Ben was enjoying it on that level as well. Ben's dad thoroughly loved it because that music is his era and he was in his element. And I think Ben's mum enjoyed it more than she expected to as well. So win-win all round. The job kept me on my toes. Ain't gonna lie. I was a one-man department, and there was nobody else who could do the job for me, and therefore I couldn't take any absence from it. So even over Christmas, when I wasn't physically going into the office, they'd set up for me to have remote access to all the computer systems and the ticketing systems that I needed, and email, so that I could be at my sister's house over Christmas and still be working. So I had to put the hours in, even though I wasn't going into the office itself. So Christmas felt like quite a short break, but good Lord, we packed a lot in. How was your Christmas? Please pop over to the Ravelry group and share your Christmas wheelings and dealings and manoeuvres on the general chatter threads, as good a place as any. I love hearing about what people get up to for Christmas. When I was a kid, my best friend Thomas Hayward, we've lost touch long since. I probably know where to find him. He's not on Facebook, but I think I've got an email address for him sometimes. But we're not current in each other's lives, and that's a shame, but it's how life goes, I guess. But we were inseparable as children, and every single year when it started to feel a bit Christmassy, when the nights were drawing in and term time was coming to a bit of a close, there was no set time for this. It's just when we felt the time was right, we would get ourselves into a Christmassy mood, and we'd never spent Christmas together. We just had our time with our separate families, but we loved telling each other our Christmas schedule, our Christmas traditions, what we did in our family, and ours were very, very different. I knew everything about Thomas's family Christmases. He knew everything about mine. But I still loved hearing about it every year. It's the one thing we did. So he would go away with his family to his extended family in Deal, to his grandmother's house, and they had their presents after lunch, which was very different from ours. And I don't think they had stockings. I think they had one present around the tree in the morning, and then everything else after dinner. Whereas in our family, we always had a stocking. It was actually a pillowcase, because you can't get much in a sock. The pillowcase at the end of the bed with all the Santa Claus presents, and our main present would be under the tree. And we weren't allowed to go downstairs. The living room door would be shut, and then we'd be able to go in, and that was just wonderful. We'd have to have cleaned our teeth and washed our face, but we'd still be in our dressing gowns. And then the big present, whether it be sometimes a bike, sometimes a Scale Extric set. We were quite lucky kids. And that was all very exciting. And then we'd have the dinner at 3:00. And all of those traditions, we would swap those stories, and genuinely it got us so excited about Christmas. So please do share your Christmas stories. That's not just me trying to say, why don't you get involved in the group. That's a byproduct. What I mean is, I genuinely love hearing people's Christmases and people. So either tell me what you did this year, or tell me about your childhood Christmases, or both. That would be amazing. So head over there and share your stories, and we can all swap and relive each other's childhood Christmases. That would be amazing. I know Christmas is behind us. I know maybe many people might be thinking, "Phew, thank goodness that's over for another year." However, I like Christmas and I like hearing about it all year round. So indulge me if you would. This year, the plan was a little different from normal. We normally go up to my sister's for Christmas. She's the one with a bigger house than anyone else in the family and can host more people, so it makes much more sense. This year my mum wasn't with us, and I know she was gutted about that because there was a lot of people that were all getting together, but she, for the first time, was spending Christmas with her partner Ron and his families. When the buses go by, sometimes we've got there's a glass lamp that's hanging down from the window, and we've got huge windows over there, and there's a glass lamp that sits against the glass, and when the window vibrates a bit, that's what that noise was. I promise it wasn't bodily functions. I promise. I know you probably expect that from me. Having said that, I have just eaten my dinner. And I was going to eat after I podcasted, but then I had to make a phone call and it took longer than I thought. So we ate first, and I think I might get a bit windy later on. I'm sorry. That was the lamp. What was I saying? Yes, my mum was at Ron's family's for Christmas, so he could be with his grandchildren, which was wonderful for him. I know my mum was a little bit upset not to be with us, and we were obviously sad not to have her there. But we had my dad and my stepmother, my sister and her 3 children and grandchild and various partners. Her husband, my sister's husband, was with us for part of the day and had to go to his mum's for his family do. But also I had all my in-laws there. So Ben and his mum and dad and his brother and his brother's boyfriend Sasha were all staying in a hotel nearby and came over to spend the day with us. It was, for me, just, I had my family and I had my husband's family and I had everyone together. The icing on the cake would have been my mum as well, but even without her there, it was just lovely to have so many people there having such a lovely, lovely time. So in order to be able to see my mum, who only lives about 20 minutes drive away from my sister, I drove up on the 23rd after I'd finished work at the Royal Festival Hall, and I stopped in at my mum's. Ben had already gone up on the train with his parents to the hotel, which was near Shrewsbury, and I had to finish work, so I got in the car and got there about 9:30, something like that in the evening. It's about a 3-hour drive from here, and spent a couple of hours with my mum, which was lovely. And we opened some presents to each other, not everything, and then it's nice to wait, but it's also nice to see each other's faces when someone opens the present that you bought for them. It's just really nice. I told you, here it comes. And sorry, my podcast, my rules, not editing that out. So there was that, and then I moved over to my sister's. Now my sister is in the process of moving house. Now her husband is a builder by trade. He owns his own construction firm, and a very, very handy chap. And he bought this plot of land, always with the idea of building 2 houses on it. So they built one house, which they moved into, and they built the second house next door. Now the plan, for some crazy reasons, they can't sell the new house. They have to sell the one they're living in and move into the new house, literally across the path. I don't know why it makes more sense financially for them to do this. Some kind of tax laws, I don't know. My sister will know, she's an accountant, I know nothing about this. And so they're at the point now where they haven't yet moved into the new house, but it is finished. So it's the perfect overflow guest facility. It's just brilliant. My sister, in fairness, actually she and her husband have moved their bedroom into the new place, but everything else is completely empty. So there's all these rooms. So there were 15 of us for dinner, I think, on Christmas Day, but everyone could stay. So there were the 4 bedrooms in the main house and the 3 other bedrooms in the new house, and it just worked like a charm. Everyone had their own bedroom, all the bathrooms all work. It was glorious. Christmas Day, lovely. So I was there for Christmas Eve. On Christmas Eve, we always go to Pizza Hut. I think I may have told you about this before, probably last year. I do like sharing my Christmas stories. Last year, on Christmas Eve, we always go to Pizza Hut and we wear silly hats, Christmas hats, of course, reindeer antlers, Santa hats, black ones that say Bar Humbug, elves, anything you can think of that's very vaguely Christmassy and stupid. My sister has, over the years, managed to amass quite a stock of these ridiculous hats. Last year I was wearing one. It's a Santa hat, but it was really, really long, probably about 4 feet long, tapering to this point with the pom-pom. And it's sort of, if you wear it, it comes down to your knees. So that was my hat last year. This year, I think I just wore a normal Santa hat. I say normal, but it had lighting up stars on the front and plays a tune if you press the right point on the brim. We are a bit crazy, and as we leave, traditionally, we always sing "We Wish You a Merry Christmas" in glorious family harmony to all the other diners at large, who basically look at us like, what's happening? And my nieces get very embarrassed by this, but I love it. It's one of my mum's favourite things, so we didn't have her there either for that, but it's, again, traditions that we carry on. I love it, absolutely love it. It's brilliant. I love seeing the looks on people's faces, because some people are like, oh, that's really nice, oh, pretty, and some people are like, what? Get out. It's like bar humbug to you. So that was that, and then Christmas Day went off as Christmas Day goes off, and then on Boxing Day, Ben and I got in the car very early in the morning to drive 4.5 hours from Cheshire down to Dorset, which is from north-ish of England, like the lower north of England, down to the south coast. Because his extended family, so aunts, uncles, cousins and all of their children and grandchildren, were all getting together in a hotel in Ringwood, just outside Poole, for a wonderful dinner. Now, the reason it was there and not somewhere else is it's closest to his cousin Simon's house. Now, Simon's wife, Sarah, who is a divine woman, I absolutely adore her, she's wonderful. This last 2 years, she's been very poorly, she has myeloma, and she's had stem cell treatment and all sorts of stuff, and she went into partial remission last year, and she's had another stem cell treatment, another round of chemo, which, fingers crossed, she'll find out in about a month, I think, whether she's gone into full remission, whether they've completely knocked on its head. For now, it's the kind of thing that will probably come back, but could be 10, 15 years down the line. So we decided that we'd congregate near there, so we're not intruding on their space and giving her lots of pressure and lots of... there were 28 people for dinner. But she didn't have to travel either, and it was wonderful, and she's looking brilliant. She's so strong-willed and so pragmatic about everything, and happy to talk about her situation so that people get the facts rather than sort of hearsay and rumour. She's wonderful, and I have to say, looking rather well, considering she'd just been through another nasty round of treatment. So that was glorious to see her, and I get on really well with Ben's extended family. They're a great group of people, and now that his younger cousins are sort of becoming adults as well, they're nice people, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I left that evening, I left Ben down there because they were all staying in the hotel, so they could all have breakfast together and motor back the next day, and I left about 11:30 at night, maybe just before. It took me just less than 2 hours to get home. It was the middle of the night, it was Boxing Day, there's nothing on the roads. The next day, Ben was going home with his brother and Sasha, and they live in Canary Wharf, so it's southeast London, and I live in North London. So it's a different route around the city, albeit it took Ben 7 hours to get home. That's 6 hours to Canary Wharf and then an hour on the tube to get back to our house. I was at work. That's the reason I had to leave. I had to work again, and I was getting these texts through the day of rising and escalating levels of stress and fury and rage and horror. I couldn't believe it. He said the roads were just at a standstill. Everyone was travelling on the 27th. It was just It was the end of everyone's Christmas, and the roads were a car park. So I was very, very glad I'd come back the night before. Poor Ben. Poor Edward, poor Sasha. Schadenfreude, can you tell? Well, I came back 2 hours the night before. I was fine. And then I was basically working through until New Year. New Year, what did we do? We went to my friend Matt's house. Now, Matt is a very good friend of mine and Ben's. Ben's known Matt for a lot longer than I have, and I've known Matt as long as I've known Ben, so for 14 years or so. And I sang at his civil partnership ceremony, and really, really close friends. And we went round there and saw a lot of his friends who've become part of our extended circle as well for New Year. It's very, very gentle. He's got a lovely house in Warwick Avenue, very nice area of town. Friends Philip and Jenny and Nick and Alex and their children, and just really, really nice. And neither one of us really drink, so we drove. And we got home in about 20 minutes, which we couldn't have done if we were doing it on public transport. And it was all just really nice, just really lovely. Then it was New Year's Day, which was the day we went to see $1 Million Quartet. I was working, but I was able to do I hurried through my work so I could be free to watch the matinee and then go back and do all the work ready for the evening show, and that fitted in quite nicely. And then the next day that show finished and my job there finished. So, and we're back almost up to date. My job there is now over, and I'm back working at the Shaftesbury Theatre on the odd day here and there. And I'm really glad I did it. I wasn't glad at the beginning. It was really, really intense, and I was really dropped in the deep end. It was proper baptism by fire. But I've learnt a lot about the ticketing world. I've learnt much more. I think if ever I wanted to hang up my acting boots, I could probably, with the experience I've had from doing that, easily apply for and be qualified to do a box office managerial job, not the action, but a deputy manager or something like that, because I had a big insight into large areas of what my bosses do at work. I had to be my own manager. Excuse me. I had to get a bit shirty with some of the ticket agencies if they weren't obeying the rules. There was one ticket agency that was sending out these little written slips that didn't have seat numbers on for the customers who were arriving. We didn't know where to put them because we didn't know what seats they'd been sold into. So I had to get really stern with people via email. It is a condition of sale, you know. I had to take all those responsibilities on for myself. But I quite enjoyed it. Once I'd got on top of the work, it was great fun. At the beginning, I felt like I was drowning. But then, sort of a week in, I was like, I can do this. This is fun. And I had my little I had my spreadsheets and tick lists, and I need to do this before the matinee, and then this before the evening, and ticking everything off on the spreadsheet was wonderful. And then at the end of the job, my entire spreadsheet was full of green ticks. Every single thing was done. Everything balanced. It was all fabulous. I was like, yeah, I'm done. Bye. See you. And that's kind of it. That's the roundup. I'm not sure there's a great deal else to say about that. No. So let's get on to community stuff, shall we? I have absolutely loved watching people's Instagram accounts over Christmas and seeing how some people doing all their gift knitting. I chose not to do any gift knitting this year. I did a lot last year. And I'll probably do some more this year, but I was having a year off. I'm absolutely fine with that, as should everyone else be if they were doing the same. No, knitters should never feel guilt. I've been listening to Louise Scully of Knit British, her podcast, and she was talking about, in one of her recent episodes, about a knitter's worth. And I think it's really, really interesting aspect. We all always underplay what we have, and she's absolutely right when she says, you are worth something. You have skills. You have knowledge and experience of what you do that other people don't have. That is a valuable commodity. What you do is valuable. It's not just Nana knitting in the corner, and even if it is, that's still valuable. Nana, who's knitting in the corner, has been doing it for 50 years and has learnt so much about how stitches are formed and about how the yarn feels, and it's a wealth of experience, and she was talking about how people always undercharge, and people get cross with her if they say, well, I'll pay for the wool. It's like, yes, and my time. All these arguments, you know all this, but it's been really interesting to hear that from a different perspective. I've always thought this and believed it, particularly with a double knit scarf that can take several months to knit, and someone says, I'd love one of those. Will you knit me one? It's like, yeah, that'd be £2,000, please. And they say that wool can't be worth that. I say, no, it's worth about 100. Really, £100? Well, where's the rest of it? And you say, well, that's my time. There's a couple of 100 hours worth of work in this, and even £10 an hour, which is not much above the national minimum wage, that's going to cost you a couple of grand to get a scarf like that, and people don't get it. I was having this conversation with my mum recently, talking about how I want to further my work as a knitwear designer and as a brand this year, and she still thinks that there's more money to be made in selling the stuff that I make, and I can't quite explain why that's just not how it works. And I said, well, yeah, but each item I'd be knitting all the time just to sell things, and I'd have to have an endless stream of people who would pay hundreds, if not thousands of pounds to make it worthwhile. She said, well, there are celebrities out there who have lots of money. It's like, it just doesn't work like that. She thinks it would be a good idea for me to have a fancy high-end studio in a swanky place in London where I could display all my items. But that's going to cost me so much money. And besides, I don't need that because there's Ravelry, and I don't sell knitted items, I sell the patterns. I think she's starting to understand it. It's just difficult, to try and explain to somebody why you know more about what you do than they do, without sounding patronising, without sounding dismissive. It's really difficult when the fact is I kind of know what I'm doing. I'm building things gently and sustainably, and I'm very happy with the progress. And it comes from a place of wanting to help. I totally understand that. But sort of on that thing about talking about looking at people's Instagram, seeing all the gifts and everything else like that, I do want to just have a bit of a whinge, if I might. I don't normally use this podcast as a platform for a whinge, but I've had a couple of slightly unpleasant exchanges with a couple of people over the last couple of months. Not much, and nothing I can't handle. But one was about one of my tutorials, and one was about one of my patterns. And they both contacted me for information or for help and advice on particular aspects of problems they were having with one or the other. I don't want to go into all the details. And I think I'm quite lucky. I don't get that many requests for pattern support. I try to be as thorough as I possibly can with my patterns, and Michelle Hazel, who's my wonderful tech editor, she's very, very good at bouncing things back, and if things don't make much sense, we work on stuff together quite closely. And I'm fairly confident that the patterns are as comprehensive as they can be. That's not to say I think that everyone's brain works in exactly the same way, and I also know that what works for somebody and makes sense to somebody might not work or make sense to somebody else. I've had to reconcile myself to that. You cannot please everybody all the time. So I know there's always going to be a couple of people that might not get what I've said. However, I always respond. I always respond with as much information as I possibly can to try and sort something out. Because there's nothing more frustrating when you reach a bit of an impasse and you think I can't continue until I get the answer to this question. So I respond as quickly as I'm able to and as thoroughly. And a couple of times that's not been enough, quite frankly, and people have got spiky, aggressive, and a bit rude in their subsequent contact with me, and I don't think that's acceptable. I really don't. I know when someone's bought a pattern, they have a right to expect that pattern will be correct. People are only human. There have been errors slipped through in some of my patterns. I hesitate to say not the ones that Michelle's tech edited, the ones I've rushed out. It's always my fault. I'm not infallible, and I always work hard to correct anything and send out amendments and all the rest of it if that does happen. But I don't want people to lose trust in what I do, and the value of tech editing is not to be sniffed at. So I do get it that people expect, and rightly, if they're paying for something, but at the end of the day, it's a couple of quid. Nothing's breaking the bank. And it's knitting, it's not the end of the world. There's no reason to get spiky, aggressive and offensive to people. And a couple of times recently I had to call people out and say, listen, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt, and I'm going to allow the anger that I'm sensing in your words to come from frustration in the moment rather than an indication of the person that you actually are. But I think it's worth pointing out that this is how you're coming across. Now, I know the tone police is not necessarily welcome, but I think if you're on a one-to-one communication with people, particularly someone you don't know, someone you're asking for help, then, do you know what, just keep a civil tongue in your head ready. So I ask you all to be watchful for that, if you might recognise elements of that in your own behaviour. I'm sure you don't. What I'm trying to suggest is that everybody is as nice to each other as they possibly can. The knitting community is wonderful. The knitting community is full of incredible people, and I would hate to think that there's the renegade few who are not. And I think sometimes people respond in haste, and let's all just be a little bit careful about how we come across in our communications with people, because particularly if someone were to tell me, I don't like your podcast, I think you should stop doing it, well, I'm not interested. You don't pay for my podcast. You don't pay to watch it. I do it for free, and my tutorials are the same. I do that as a way of engaging with people and helping people and wanting to be helpful. Now, if you don't find that helpful, trot on until you find a video that does suit you, because I've done my best. That sounds like I'm feeling a little bit narked by it all. Well, I am a little bit, I have to say. It's not a big deal, and I don't need any sympathy or comeback on this. I just think it's useful to point these things out when they happen. Certainly, I would never name or shame. I've just responded in the way I've responded. I've closed down the lines of communication and moved on. And I wish these people all the best with their future knitting activities. So into real community, where the knitting community is at its best. I did put out a plea on the Christmas podcast for podcast questions. I do love podcast questions. And one thing, the podcast questions thread kind of ran away with itself. Gosh, I'm becoming a proper schoolmistress in this episode. I'm so sorry. I did put up some guidelines in the podcast questions thread, because it was kind of becoming like a general knitting help advice column, and it wasn't supposed to be that. This is supposed to be stuff that I can answer on the podcast about what I do, who I am, where I come from, all the rest of it. It's not a case of, I'm finding a problem with doing this, that and the other, is there any way you can help? Well, I might be able to, I might know that. There's other threads for that. I want the podcast thread to be just what it is, just for stuff for the podcast. That makes sense, doesn't it? And a lot of people, thank you to all, have gone in and placed things there. So I'm just going to go back to the beginning of them, and I'll work through them sequentially. Where's the first one? Again, some of them have been answered by kind people in the podcast questions thread, which is fine. So I don't need to answer those if it's knitting related. Now, not just hats. Who is sorry, I should have planned all that. I told you, flying by the seat of my pants, really. Not just hats, who is Diane from Wisconsin. I was talking to someone in Wisconsin on the radio yesterday. That's another story. My question is about the Vickle braid. I'm wondering. She's talking about the Vickle braid. This is kind of knitting advice. Diane, I think I'll answer that, I think, in person. Is your question is all about, for those that are interested, is all about, often with a Vickle braid you can end up with a row of stitches above the Vickle braid which are really really loose, like twice the height of a normal row, and it can be quite ugly. The Vickle braid is the little horizontal braid that features in my Paganino cowl. I love them, they're fiddly to do, but there is a way of doing it. Some people have suggested going down onto smaller size needles for the Vickle braid row, and I think that would probably work. I think that's more of a faff. The way I've come across doing it is it's about where to pull the yarn tight. And I can't explain it here, but there is a tutorial that I put out on how to do the Vickle braid, and I explain in there where to pull the yarn tight so that you can actually keep those stitches from getting too loose and floppy. So check that out. There's a lot in here. GSP for me. Your name is Julie, and you're from the Greater Seattle area. You have said, hello Nathan, I loved your singing at the beginning and end of your Christmas episode. Well, thank you very much. I was wondering if you would still perform on the West End or in any other professional show for the right role. If so, what role would that be, or are you forever retired? Well, Julie, I'm not at all retired, not even remotely. I sing wherever I can, whenever I get the opportunity to, and will always be first and foremost an actor. The other aspects of my life, including this knitting world, is just it's a sideline, and it's a useful one, very useful one. I'm thoroughly enjoying it. It's a hobby that's becoming an extra strand of income, but it's never going to get in the way of my performing career. So yes, I would happily, as and when the opportunity arises, be back in the West End in a heartbeat. It wouldn't need to be a particularly special role to tempt me back. I enjoy working. I enjoy the lifestyle of doing 8 shows a week. I quite like having my days free and working in the evenings. It suits me very well. And shows I'd love to be in. I still want to be in Phantom of the Opera. I've done a lot of Cameron Mackintosh's shows. I was in Les Mis, Martin Guerre, Miss Saigon, and Mary Poppins, all for Cameron Mackintosh. But I've never been in Phantom, and I've always loved Phantom of the Opera. I'd like a chance of that. I think the older I get, the more chance I have of maybe playing one of the managers, Andre or Firmin, something like that would suit my voice quite well. So there you go. That's that. Thank you for that. What does it say here? Now, since this is the podcast questions thread, I have to ask, how did you get all those wee bells in your beard without losing any as you sang and talked? And what are you using to care for your beard? I've never seen my dad with a beard since my mum detested them. He's grown one since she passed away 2 years ago, and I think it would be nice to give him something for his birthday. I just don't know what. Well, JC, who is JC or Joe from Winnipeg, the little beard baubles, they're just on Kirby grips, which are, I think, the same as what people in North America call bobby pins. And they literally just clip into the beard. So they were so easy to put in, and the beard clips are brown, and some of the hair in my beard is still brown, apart from my badger stripes, my little go faster stripes here. I was hoping for a fourth one to separate, but I think it's just getting a thicker one there. So yeah, behind that there's brown hair, and and that's what it clips into. In terms of conditioning and stuff, a lot of people oil. I do have a lot of beard oil, and some of it smells really nice, but I prefer a leave-in conditioner. I shampoo my beard every day when I have my bath, and I just Head and Shoulders, whatever shampoo I'm using at the time. You can get specific beard shampoo and grooming kits and stuff. I got a couple of things, bits and pieces from people for Christmas. I don't wax or anything, but I do use a beard shampoo, and I use beard conditioner, and I use Woody's 2-in-1 beard conditioner. It smells nice. It's not perfume, but it's just a really nice sort of like woody scent. It's called Woody's. I'm sure that's a coincidence, or maybe it's not. I just, once I've washed and dried, toweled out my beard, combed out any tangles, then you rub in this conditioner and rub it right through to the skin as much as possible, and then I comb it all through again. You just leave it in, and it keeps things nice and soft, and it helps preventing tangles as well. It's a lot of beards won't tangle. Something this long really can. I mean, there's a lot of it. And the beard conditioner is really useful for two reasons. It looks after and moisturises the hair, excuse me, but it also it moisturises the skin underneath. Beard druff is a thing, and if you sort of were to look too closely at unconditioned skin and get right in there, it can get really, really flaky and horrible. If you think every day sort of washing your face and exfoliating all the time, but you don't really get through with a flannel. I can wash, but I'm only washing the top layer of hair. I'm not actually getting through to the skin. So that exfoliation doesn't happen, and dry skin can build up, and it can be really kind of gross. So moisturising the skin prevents that from happening. And a good comb as well. I comb everything as much as I can several times a day to sort of stimulate the hair growth and the skin and keep everything nice and clean and attractive underneath. So that's a little bit of beard care 101 for you. Junip, you've also asked the same question. So how did they attach to my beard? Which is Jen from I forgot where you are, Jen. Oh, you're in Colorado. Hello, Jen. So I've answered that one as well. And in front of the trend of your beard, I was wondering. This is from Knitting Lisa, who of course will be called Lisa and is from Georgia. I found American today. Canadian, North American, sorry. In following the trend on your beard, Nathan, I was wondering, is there a purpose, in quotes, for your beard, or are you growing it just because you like it? When you mentioned you didn't even want to trim your moustache a few podcasts ago, I wondered if you had a specific role coming up where you needed that kind of bearded look. No, and actually it's probably quite detrimental to my acting career, so the moment I get an audition for anything important, then I'll probably just shave it off. No, it's purely and simply because I like it. I do like beards on men, without wanting to overshare. I find beards very attractive, and I've had beards that come and go before, but I've just never let them grow like this. This is absolutely the largest beard I've ever had, or probably will ever have. It's been growing now for 10 months. It's been a big commitment, and I love it. I really, really like it. I like it makes me different. It makes, I don't mean different from everyone else, it makes me different from the person that I often am when I'm not bearded, and I like that. I like changing things up. So the purpose of it is to enjoy it for its own benefits, and because I feel it like shaving my head, like growing a silly mohawk. I think all of these things are methods of self-expression, and I feel that at the moment being a bearded man expresses the man I want to be. I hope that makes sense. Bearded Cheel, lovely John Glenn, who of course is the host of the fantastic Bearded Cheel podcast up in Thursone, Scotland, says, "Hi Nathan, I was spinning some natural colours for a hat idea that came into my head. What's your process when an idea hits? Post-its, notepad, tablet, sketch, knit a sample? I like to find out about the mental process. I'm a nosy old git." Well, I welcome nosy old gits around these parts. To be honest, John, I'm not sure. I think most of my process is mental. And I don't mean I'm crazy. I don't mean that at all. I mean that ideas tend to ruminate in here for quite a long time before they come out into any tangible format. And I tend not to really test knit things. The first sample I make would be the test for it, and I would just see how it goes. That would It depends on what it is. Sometimes, if it's a double knitting pattern, if it's just like a scarf with a particular design on it, then I will chart that out in advance, and I'll make sure I got the pattern looking how I want it to. Oh, there's a finger click. Apologies. There you go. Done. And yeah, I use. I'm a Mac user, and I use Numbers, which is spreadsheet program, and I just colour in the squares black or white, and that's how I do that, and then I knit from that. So I've already done the work up front. There are certain things where I know if there's a particular type of shaping or any particular type of texture, when I get to certain points I go, I don't know how to write that down because I'm not there yet. So I'll knit to that point and then find out how I'm doing it on the needles and chart it from that. So sometimes I work in reverse. It very much depends on the necessities of the individual piece. So if there's anything to do with construction, I think, well, when I get to that point, I can't work out in advance how many stitches I'm going to have on the needle. Then I'll need to wait till I get there, and then I can work it out that way. But I'm not a Post-its person. Sometimes I will write a little sketch of something, but usually I've thought it through in enough detail before I've even got round to pen and paper or needles and sticks. Needles and yarn. Sticks and string. Sticks plus twine. Pins and wool. I could go on. Somebody stop me. There's no one here to stop me. I just have to try and rein myself in. So that is my process, which isn't a process. Nana Jane. What has Nana Jane got to say for herself? I watched your tutorial on the subject of joining a Vickle braid when working the round. Thank you for an elegant, neat solution. I'm about to make a pair of gloves with several of these braids in the pattern. And this set me wondering how I might want to make a braid which is a mirror image for the second glove rather than working the pattern for the cuffs from the fingers down to the cuff. Such symmetry appeals, yeah, me too. And I reversed the stitch pattern on the pair of mitts I've just finished for my husband, who is also a knitter and occasional viewer of your podcast. Oh, hello, Mr. Gibson. Hi, nice to meet you. And these were made for some beautiful fair isle, from Isle yarns, which is grown by some friendly sheep on the Isle of Purbeck. How lovely. Now, I haven't come across this yarn, and I don't. I did mention I occasionally visit Dorset. I don't really. I just went down there once for Ben's family. I don't have much of a link with Dorset, so it's an unknown entity to me. So I haven't come across Purbeck yarn. So Jane in Dorset. Hello. I'm sorry I don't know your part of the world better. I do quite like what I've seen of it so far. In terms of working the Vickle braid in two directions, it absolutely is possible. It's certainly possible working flat. I've done it, but it's working it on the opposite side. So actually, I worked the Vickle braid on the wrong side for it to show on the right side, and because I was doing that on a return row, the stitches ended up leaning on the right side, facing the opposite direction. So I have a little swatch somewhere. I don't have it to hand, unfortunately, but it's I've shown it in one of the previous episodes. I got very excited about this. It's very, very short, and it has two Vickle braids on it, one above the other, and one is facing that way and one is facing the other. And that's because the first one was worked the normal way from the front, and the other was worked from the back. I can't remember how I did it. So it is definitely possible. I would say that if it's possible flat, it's almost certainly possible in the round. You may need to change direction. Or you may need to start knitting inside out. I'm sure there are ways of doing it. There must be a way of doing it. I can't really, without having stuff on the needles to give it a go, I can't really work that out. But I think that it's a quest that you should pursue, because it certainly, theoretically, will work. I'm sure someone out there, if anyone has done this, if anyone has worked a Vickle braid in the opposite direction in the round and can get in touch, then please send Nana Jane and or me a Ravelry message and let us know. That would be very, very exciting. What have we got here? Whimsical Madness, who's Mimi. This isn't a question, but I'm really, really delighted that she sent this. I've been binge watching your podcast recently, currently on episode 23, there's still some to go. I love it, I really enjoy the whole podcast, but I find the What's Tat segment particularly interesting. In episode 23 you discussed the Adinkra symbol Fawahodi, as I've always pronounced it. It made me curious about the pronunciation and Adinkra symbols overall, so I googled it. I found this YouTube video that shows the symbols, their proper pronunciation and their literal meanings. I thought you might find it interesting. And I did, and it was really interesting to hear a native African speaker, I'm assuming from Ghana, possibly from Nigeria, I'm not sure, but somebody who is from that part of the world, speaking English, but pronouncing the symbols' names the way they should be. And a couple of them were news to me. Fawahodi, I've always said, was Fawhodie. Fawhodie. And it's pronouncing the IE at the end of Fawhodie, which I didn't know at all, which is lovely to learn. And another one that's on my arm, which I've always said is Hwemudua, is Hwemudua, Hwemudia. So the stress is on the mu rather than the do. I always said Hwemudua, but it's Hwemudia. So all of that has been really, really interesting, and thank you, Mimi, for alerting me to that. If anybody wants to check that out, head over to the podcast questions thread and look at post number 201, and you can link to the YouTube thing from there. Not all of the ones on my arm are on it. He's done a sort of alphabet of them, and not all of the ones in it are on my arm, but of those that are, fascinating. Thank you very much for that. My next question is: everyone sort of got on the tattoo bandwagon, which I don't. I think people miss What's Tat. I think I've retired the segment purely and simply because I just couldn't remember what I had done and what I have not done. So if anybody can come up with a comprehensive list, I ain't going to do it. If anyone wants to bother to come up with a list of all the tattoos that I have mentioned in the What's Tat sections, I mean there's 74 of them on this arm, so a lot of them didn't need any explanation. I have the letters of my name, for example, and that's 6 taken care of straight away. I've got all the planets from the astrology, the alchemical symbols for the astronomical planets. My brain is tired. I've got all the planets on my arm as well. So there's another 9 because I did include Pluto. So there's not, even though there's only episode 36. That's nearly not even halfway through the number of symbols that I've got on my arm. I don't think there's one for every episode up to 74 by any means, but I can't remember what I've done, so I didn't want to repeat myself, so some of them inevitably will not be done. So if anyone does want to furnish me with a list, then I will gratefully reignite the flames of What's Tat. But she says, this is, well, I'm not sure how to pronounce your name, Sidhne. Is it Sydney? I don't know. Your name is Jenny, so I'm assuming it's not Sydney. But anyway, Jenny, you said, my next question is about your tattoos as well. I haven't seen an episode where you discuss your 7-point star. I ask because among my friends this has a very specific meaning relating to a Wiccan group, and I wondered if yours was the same. Best regards, Jenny. Jenny, who is from somewhere in America, I can't remember. If it hasn't been discussed, then I'll go into it. Why not? So for old time's sake, we now have a section, your friend and mine, called What's Tat? Anyway, okay, so the 7-pointed star, or the heptagram, as it is often known, is flaring. Hello, look at that. It's right here. I have mine in dark green, and it is unicursive, meaning it can be drawn in one line all the way through. So it's a bit like the 5-pointed star, but it has 7 points. It's a little bit more complicated to draw. And yes, this is absolutely a Wiccan symbol, and it's there because of that. I don't particularly I don't follow any kind of religion or spirituality, but I wanted my arm to encompass quite a lot of different ones, and I wanted to include the seven-pointed star. And I know there are lots of different interpretations of what the points represent, but for me and for the research that I did, the 7 points represent the four elements: earth, air, fire and water, and the other three are above, below and within. So I don't know if that's the same meanings that you ascribe to them with your group, Jenny, but for me it's earth, air, fire and water, above, below and within. So above, below and within for me is not necessarily, it's certainly not a heaven and hell type of thing. It's what's out there in the world, what may be hidden from you, and what is in the person that you are, what's inside you, and making sure that all of those things are aligned together with the elements, which is the world around us, the earth, air, fire and water, making sure that all of that works together in harmony. Because I think when you have that working well, then everything is in ease with everything else. So that for me is what my particular heptagram represents. I hope that makes sense. Now the other tattoo related question is something I'm not going to share today. I'll ask the question, I'm not going to answer it. So I also had one of this is Jint's 65, who is Jeanette from Birmingham, not too far away. One of the segments I've enjoyed in your podcast has been What's That? And finding out the meaning of your tattoos and why you have them is really interesting. Well, thank you for that. Since I've had my tattoos, it's brought an appreciation of others, and I often find myself walking up to complete strangers and letting them know I love their tattoos. Therefore, when I saw a picture of you topless on Instagram a while ago, I saw you had a large back tattoo. Are you able to let us know what it is and the meaning of it? Thanks, Jeanette. Well, yes, I do have a rather large back tattoo. I never intended for it to be part of What's Tat. And I'm going to save it. I'm going to save it for a later podcast. It starts up on my shoulder here and goes way down below my waist on one side, and the whole lower half of my back on the other side as well. This end is empty. I could talk about it at length, and I will do at some point. But I think on the off chance that somebody might come up with a list, not that I'm asking, promise, on the off chance that somebody might let me know what I have yet to cover, I may revisit What's Tat, and I may finish off what's there on my arm and then work around the other tattoos on my body. I have one on my arm here, and I have one on my ankle, and then of course the large one on my back. And I think it would be only right to finish up with the one on my back. It's the largest, and it's the most meaningful to me, and it's also the newest. So 2 years, 2014 I had it done, so we're coming up to 3 years old for that now, in April and August, because I had it done in 2 sessions. So I'm going to leave that, if you don't mind. Also, it means getting my kit off, and I feel a bit uncomfortable doing that. Now listen, I'm not at all uncomfortable about getting my kit off. I was in a show for on and off for about 2.5 years called Naked Boys Singing, where I was completely naked on stage, high kicks and all, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I have no problems whatsoever with being naked or with any kind of body dysmorphia or anything like that. But in a theatre, people have paid for their ticket and it's a closed environment. I don't know who's going to be watching this, and of course I wouldn't have to show anything untoward or anything more than I would show off walking down the street in the summer or on the beach. I'll find a way of removing my clothes, enough clothes to see it gently. I may do some sort of pre-recording and have some shots of just the area that covers my back, so I'm not here stripping off, because that's a bit orcs, isn't it? And then Cottage Fibre, who is watching these podcasts in reverse. She started with the newest one and she's going backwards, so apparently my beard is shrinking with every episode. And what is asking why I'm referred to as Sockmatician. Well, it's very simple. It's the name I gave myself when I started knitting. I think I may have talked about this before. You'll probably get to this later on you'll get to this later in an earlier episode. I started knitting socks before I moved on to anything else at all. Socks were the first things I learned how to knit, and I loved it, and I still do. I really enjoy knitting socks, and I because that was all I knitted, and I needed a name for myself. And also I have a sort of a mathematical bent to the way my brain works, and the socks that I was designing were all sort of based on mathematical principles. So I just combined socks and mathematician and got Sockmatician. It's not really that much of an interesting story, I'm afraid. So apologies for that. Well, there we are. That's there we are. Oh gosh, we're an hour already. That's the community dealt with, and thank you very much for those questions. I really genuinely do love getting questions in the podcast questions thread, so please pop over there. I love having something to chat to you about rather than just my usual blether. So let's move on, shall we, to stash enhancement. I don't have a huge amount, to be honest. I think people are starting to get reluctant to buy me yarn as a present, thinking that will be in some way a boring present. These are, of course, non-knitters who don't understand how a knitter's brain works, as if buying yarn could ever be boring to a yarniac. I mean, really? I only received the gift of yarn from one person this Christmas, and it was from my lovely husband Benjamin, who was apologetic in giving it to me as if I wouldn't like it. Well, of course I love it. But I did also buy some, so I'm going to go chronologically. I bought some on Christmas Eve when we were in Shrewsbury. I went to RKM Wools, which is a very nice little shop. It's sort of, forgive me, this is a terrible generalisation. It's a shop that knows its market, and it's a shop which is in a provincial town where people are not necessarily swayed by or influenced by the stuff we see and enable each other for on the internet and all the sort of high-end independent stuff that we all know and love so well. So it's catering for a different market, but it's a nice little shop, and it's got a wide selection of stuff, most of it in balls rather than skeins, shall we say. But I did find a type of yarn that I've not come across before, a brand of yarn I should say, called Botany Lace. Now it's not lace weight, it's definitely fingering weight. It's 100% wool, and it's 410 meters per 100 grams. I mean, that's so totally a fingering weight. And apparently it's made in Romania. And it was distributed by Designer Yarns Limited, so people probably do know it. Botany Lace must be the type of yarn. It's extra fine merino wool, it says. And I bought 3 skeins because the colours, I just kind of liked it. I thought these would just make nice vanilla socks. So the first one I bought, I don't know how any of these are going to knit up, was this. They're all quite muted. They're all of a type. They're not sort of big, bright, jewel tone colours. There's this one here, and this is the label. Araucania, I don't know how to pronounce that. Dry cleaning is recommended, it says. Gently hand wash with cool water and mild soap. Wash similar colours separately. Dry flat. Do not sun soak. No, do not sun dry, soak, spin, or tumble dry. So, you know, but it's kind of nice. I like these colours together. They're sort of muted. What will be interesting about this is seeing how it's going to knit up, because the colour sections are really short. In between my fingers there, it's already going from the dark grey brown through to the sort of peachy red, and back out the other side. So that's only going to be 1 or 2 stitches. And like it seems to be like, let's have a look at this. Let's have a little look. Yeah, can you see really, really short patches of colour? So particularly there, maybe a little bit longer on the yellow and the green. Oh, so it's a tatty old skein. I think this might be a bit of a nightmare to ball up. It's going to get in a proper tangle, isn't it? But yeah, really, really interesting. So I'll be interested to see whether that will look really, really speckled. I think it probably will. And obviously gauge dictates how the colours will stack up on top of each other in a row and stitch counts and stuff like that. But I shall watch with interest how that develops. So that's that one there. It's a bit of a mess, that skein. I also was quite intrigued by this one. Camo yarn. Look at that, proper camouflage colours. Now it's the same sort of thing. You can see here very, very short stretches of colour. Very short. It's going to be 2 stitches maximum, I should think. Let's open this up. I've not opened this one up either, so I don't know what it's going to look like in the hank. Look at that. It's really, really interesting. I love to think that it would knit up looking exactly like that, and I get an actual pair of camouflage socks. It would just be brilliant. Fingers crossed for me. Please keep your fingers crossed that that's what will happen with this, and I will actually get proper army camouflage socks. That would appeal to me on so many levels, I cannot tell you. I suspect I'll get more of a speckled, mottled texture, but you never know. You just never know. I might get proper camouflage socks. And there's that one done. The third one is different. It's a really nice set of colours that very, very well complement each other, and it's this. Oh, maybe I should say the lot numbers. So this is colour. This one here, the first one I showed, is colour 16424. It's imaginative, isn't it? And the camo is maybe that's a 6. 16594. It's hard to tell. You can decide for yourselves whether you think that's 16 or 18594. There. So this one is colour 3006, lot number something smudged. But it's really pretty. Really, really lovely. I love the delicate shades here. There's not a huge amount of contrast between them, but the hues are really subtle and really nice, and it's obviously not the same as the first one. Let's have a little look at this opened out, because again you get a bit more of a sense of what it might end up doing. Do you know, this might even be a self-striper. I don't know. No, I don't know. I'm trying to follow one individual strand. No, it's not going to self-stripe at all. It's just that the colour shifts are much more subtle as it goes from one to the other. I think this will end up being a very sort of finely, gently mottled, because that's going from kind of mustard by my fingers through red to blue to brown to purple and back to the mustard. That's probably the colour repeat there. It's just the way they all play with each other. They all sort of blend in the eye. It's a bit like the theory behind pointillism. The eye. If you look at that, it looks like a sort of a heathered purple, but actually it's made up of lots and lots of different colours. Pointillism, for those of you who may not know, is a style of French impressionist painting. Georges Seurat is the main proponent of it, and the theory behind it was it's made of little dots, pointillism, points of light, and so the colours were created from using different concentrations of component colours rather than mixing stuff. So the idea was that the theory behind it was if you wanted a green of a certain colour, you would mix different concentrations of blue dots and yellow dots to give you the kind of green you wanted, and by having more blue than yellow you could have a darker green, and more yellow than blue you could have a brighter green. So that's how you could build up different colours. The science behind it is quite mind-boggling when you think of how difficult it must have been to create the colours you wanted, because these were often done on huge canvases. I saw one in the Krullenmuller art gallery in the Netherlands. It's Seurat's painting called Le Chahout. And it's magnificent. It's huge, and when you get up to see it close up, you can see how the colours shimmer. It's unlike anything you've ever seen. And the theory behind it, which is the point I'm making, is that that rather than letting the colours get mixed on the palette, they would be mixed. So that's pigment showing you the colour. What pointillism does, it allows the brain to let the eye do the mixing for you. So it's not pigment, it's the light. It's the different colours of light that get mixed in the eye and in the brain to create the colours, and that's intended to give the colours much more luminescence, because the work's not being done in the paint, it's being done in the beholding of it. Does that make sense? And I suspect that's what this will be like, because it is multi-coloured, but from a distance it's kind of just all blends into one. Feels quite nice. It's very high twist. You can see trying to focus on the yarn. Very high twist, so it's going to be quite a smooth yarn, I suspect. It doesn't say if it's superwash or not. Probably not. That's interesting. This one, made in Italy. This one made in Romania. And this one made in Romania as well. So this is one's very different. I like it. Yeah, I have no great plans for these except vanilla socks. I like making vanilla socks out of variegated yarn. The more I become accomplished as a sock knitter, the more I realise that what I don't want to do is pattern socks with patterned yarn. Lovely though these patterns are, and you think, oh, I love that stitch texture. I am more and more inclined to allow the yarn to do the work. If it's a beautiful yarn, let it be beautiful. You go to all that effort with a cable pattern or with a lace pattern, and then it just gets broken up entirely by the yarn, which is doing work all on its own. So I'm very happy to knit plain vanilla socks, toe up or toe down, as a kind of a palette cleanser between more complicated things. And for that, it's nice to have really interesting fun yarns. So that's those. That was really nice. And then from Ben, this is really nice. The light is failing a little bit here. It's getting later than I was expecting. It's 3:30 in the afternoon, so it's getting a little bit darker. So let's get this out of the way before it gets too dull and dim in here. This is from Ben, and this is some Wollmeise. And it's Wollmeise Pure. It's called the Igor colorway. Let me just see if I can get a little bit more light on. There we go, look at that. It's blowing me out a little bit, but it's showing you the colours on the skein a bit better. So that is stunningly beautiful. So the Wollmeise Pure is 100% wool, and it's 100% merino superwash. This is 150 grams, so with a Wollmeise skein you get 1.5 what you normally get. So it's 350 meters per 100, so this is going to be 525 meters, which is quite a lot. You can do a lot with a skein of Wollmeise, and it's always skeined up very tightly. It's a very hard skein, so you don't get a real sense of the squidge, but you do get a sense of how much yarn there is in it. And it's these beautiful, rich aubergine plum tones going into this grey, which on here is showing a bit more purple. It does kind of have a purple-ish hue to it, but it's kind of just this dark slate grey, like Aberdeen in the rain. Really lovely colours, and how it blends from the grey into the purple. You get these sort of faded areas here, which is just really nice. I don't know what it's going to be. I love the colours of Wollmeise. Sometimes I find Wollmeise a little bit splitty to work with, so I might want to take care of what kind of project I choose for this. But I'm really looking forward to finding the perfect project for it. I think the colours are beautiful. Shimmering and shining. Shining, shimmering, splendid. I'd probably get into trouble for YouTube for singing that on there. A little bit of Aladdin for you. So that's my stash enhancement done. Now let's talk about whips. Whips, indeed. I would say whips. There's no H in whips. It's whips. So let's talk about the whips that I've got going at the moment. I have made a little bit of progress on my Il Barato scarf. I am well now into this top section here. The light is really bad. There you go. So you can really see how that's starting to come together in the blue and the orange section there. This is one of the wider sections, and you see these sort of like almost boat-shaped things at the bottom. Well, this section will be a square, and then there's another set of the boat shapes on top. So this section will probably be up to about there, up to my nose. Can you see? So that's coming on nicely. It's such a joy to work on. I haven't had a great deal of time to spend on it, but I really do love it. It is getting longer. It's beautiful. It's going to be gorgeous and stunning. I mean, there's going to be a lot of ends to weave in because of all the colour changes. I don't mind that so much, and I probably will put a fringe on both ends in the 4 colours. Nice sort of thick, heavy, knotted fringe. I'm looking forward to that, learning how to do that and implementing that. And yeah, I'm just picking the colours at random very deliberately. What 2 would work nice next. I have no formula for it, and that's very deliberate. At first it was making sure I was using a combination I hadn't used already, but then you can't do that all the time. And now I'm thinking, well, some of the colour combinations show up certain textures better than others. So if there's a bulkier pattern, then I might use the blue and the orange tend to be quite difficult to see. So if you can use thicker lines in the pattern, then I might go for blue and orange. Although on this one I didn't go for that. I possibly should have done, except this is a large pattern, so there's more of it to be able to see, if that makes sense. So yeah, it's building up nicely. I haven't done a great deal of double knitting recently, so when I do get a chance to come back to this, I love it. I really, really love it. I love the feeling of a yarn in each hand, and I love the action of the yarns moving backwards and forwards. And I know a lot of people are put off double knitting if they don't like ribbing, for example. They don't like constantly moving the yarns backwards and forwards. But for me, they finally come to get me. For me, it's not an extra thing. It's not a burden. It's part of the movements of making the stitch. As I finish a purl stitch, the yarns go to the front. I don't know. For me, it feels very streamlined, and it works for me. It's not going to be true for everybody. I totally get that. But me, I love it. That's my Il Barato. Not to forget, of course, the wonderful dyer, who is Larissa, who I think I'm going to be seeing on Saturday at a friend's birthday party. So Larissa, I hope you will be there. I think you will. This is Easy Knitter. No, I'm so sorry. Oh, Travel Knitter. I'm going to see Larissa at John, who is Easy Knitter. Terrible mistake there. I'm going to see her at his studio. He's hosting the party for another mutual friend of us all. That's why I got confused. She's Travel Knitter, and beautiful, beautiful, beautiful colours. So that's that. What else is a work in progress? Well, I've got something quite exciting. Let me grab it from over here. Now you'll remember, talking of John at Easy Knits, who is Easy Knitter on Ravelry, I bought this when I saw him just before Christmas. This is his Pond Hopper colourway in Deeply Wicked range. So lovely, really luminous colours, look at that. Just gorgeous, so bright and so fabulous. Looked wonderful in the hank, looks really lovely caked up, and knits very, very nicely as well. And I already have a sock. It's not blocked. I don't block socks. I feel no shame about this thing. I just can't see the point. They're going to be stretched over your feet anyway. No, not interested. Not interested. They're going to get washed. They're going to get stretched and worn. Sock's a sock, innit? This is entirely just fluff on it. Just a plain vanilla sock. And look at the way those colours play with each other. Just gorgeous. The spiralling stripes all the way down. Only interrupted here at the gusset where they started to pool a little bit as the stitch count changes. These progress markers, I've deliberately left where they were. I don't normally use progress markers, but I took a couple of days. I cast. Actually, this sock is quite interesting. Let's talk about this sock, shall we? This bad boy here is Mark II. Now I know how to make a sock. I don't work from a pattern. I just work from my knowledge of sock construction, and it's cuffed down, and I cast on. There's fluff all over it. I cast on with the German twisted cast on, or the old Norwegian cast on, which is really, really stretchy. And I always do that with my needles side by side, so you get even more wool in it. And then I do my favourite type of rib, I think most attractive, is a 2x1, so knit 2, purl 1 all the way round. And I cast on my normal stitch count, which is 72 stitches, which is nice because 72 is not only divisible by 4 for all the heel and toe construction, it's also perfectly divisible by 3 for the ribbed cuff. So it works perfectly for me. I love the symmetry in that. I don't have to do any jiggery pokery. And I liked how it was all coming together, and there were quite wide stripes in the spiralling. But then I tried it on, the 2.25 needle, 2.25 millimeter, and it was really big. And I thought, this is going to be a big baggy sock, and hand-knitted socks tend to get baggier with wear, so I wasn't particularly happy with it. And I thought, that's so odd. I think my gauge is changing. I think I'm becoming a looser knitter. I used to be very, very tight. I started knitting socks at 80 stitches and then down to 72. But it was really quite substantially too baggy, and I really wanted to change that. So I ripped it out and I cast on again 64. Actually, I cast on 66 stitches to make this divisible by 3, and I've gone down to 64. 64! And the sock fits me. It's a little bit snugger than my socks normally are, but it fits me really rather well. I shall demonstrate. So I expected perhaps to change from. I'm wearing my really, really long socks. I expected to change from 72 perhaps to 68, but I don't know. I don't know. I just kept going down, and here's how the sock fits. It fits very nicely. It's on. The length is good. The stitches across the instep are a little bit open. They're a little bit. I'm not sure there's much of a chance of me getting my foot to anything. So across the instep here, they are a little bit more stretched out than I would normally have stitches be in a sock. But other than that, it doesn't feel overly tight, and I think that will relax with wear as well. So here we are with a sock of 64 stitches. And may I say, I now fully understand why it is that so many of the girl podcasters can knit socks so quickly, because they've got no damn stitches in them. This knitted up so fast compared with what I'm used to, because it's only 64 stitches per round, not a whole 8 more on every single round. Now, it's quite a long sock. There's 20 rounds of ribbing. Then there was, I think I did 60 rounds before I did that's already 80. Then the heel flap, which has also got fewer stitches in it. Then the gusset, which is probably about another 20 rounds. And then another 50 rounds, and then the toe. So we're talking maybe 200 rounds, and 200 times 8 it's like another 1,600 stitches. So fewer than I would normally do. So of course it was faster. So there we are. I think it's gorgeous. I think it's really it's doing that pointillism thing. It just looks like this wonderful lawn green, and the closer you get to it, you can really see how the colours beautifully spiral around it. It's just not too tight. It's really not. So anyway, back to the construction of said sock. Struggle out of my rather low sofa. So yeah, this was 60. I cast on 66 and went down to 64. I just decreased one stitch on either side as I got into the first round of plain knit. Knit another 60 rows. Did a slip stitch heel. I love how the stripes have become really prominent and really uniform actually on the heel. Really uniform. You've got 4 colours, just cycling through them, 1 per row. That works really nicely. But I was quite amazed at how quickly things were going. So I sat down for a couple of hours one evening, and I had knitted almost to the heel flap. Almost, another 4 rows to go. So I put a progress marker in there. And I was whipping through, and in one evening, a couple of hours knitting, I got down to the heel flap itself, knitted the whole heel flap, turned the heel the standard way, my standard way. Now that, I've spoken about this before, but on the right side, the decrease I use is a knit 2 together as perfectly standard, and on the wrong side, the decrease I use is an SSP. Not an SSK, and not just purl 2 together either. SSP is the perfect companion to the knit 2 together, and we can see how that works. You probably won't be able to see on camera, how unfortunate. But here, can you see how that line of the slip stitches just perfectly turn around the corner that way and keep going? Well, because it's an even number of stitches, it's going to be on the knit furrow on the other side, so it's not going to be on the line of slip stitches. But can you see how the stitches from this line of knit stitches again just get there and immediately turn the corner beautifully? It's so symmetrical. If you really care about symmetry I mean, who's ever going to notice, who's ever going to see? But if you, the knitter, wants to care about symmetry on your heels, then when you knit 2 together across the gap on the right side, when you do it on the purl side, if you SSP across the gap, it's going to be perfect and beautiful. So that's what I did. Then I picked up the stitches, did the gusset decreases. On the SSK side, I always use Cat Bordy's Hungry Stitch, which if you are not aware of, is a good way of preventing a line of SSKs from being loose and floppy and preventing ladders and stuff. So you get this beautiful, neat line all the way down that looks just as neat and tidy as your knit 2 together line on the opposite side. It's really useful, very simple to implement, and I do it all the time. I do it on the toes as well. And then I knit the foot, and then I knit the toe in the standard wedge fashion, and Kitchener grafted across the end. That is my preferred sock formula when I'm not doing my own toe-ups recipe, of course, Sockmatician's toe-ups. But in the one evening, I'd gone from there all the way to the end of the gusset and more. From that stitch marker to that stitch marker, including the heel flap, heel turn, and all of the gusset. And then the next night, I picked it up again, and in a couple of hours again, knitted the entire foot and the toe, grafted it shut, done. So this was probably a 4-session sock. I've done it in about three evenings, 3.5 evenings, something like that. And I've now cast on and just finished the cuff on the second sock. There we are. I've done exactly the same, 66 stitches going down to 64, and I've done about 6, 7, 8 rows there. So, since I last saw you, this skein has done rather well. And I think, obviously, if I am going to be using fewer stitches, I'm going to end up using less yarn, which means I have more yarn left over. So I may end up doing some kind of scraps project as well, which I've never really done before, because I've always thought I'll just keep the little bits I have left over for when I need to repair and darn. But if I've got substantial amounts left over, also it is now becoming second nature for me to correct any laddering. So this is where my magic loop ends were, on both sides of the sock running down there, and I'm really pleased with now absolute absence of magic loop ladders. It's because I don't really think about it now. I just, for those of you who want to know how I'm doing this, I will probably do a tutorial at some point, but check back 6 or 7 episodes ago, I forget the number. If anyone else can put in the notes on below, leave a comment if you know which episode it was. And it's foolproof. For me, the way I knit is absolutely foolproof and leaves me with no ladders whatsoever. And particularly, you'll notice when it's on the foot, often you with the best of intentions, you will often down the side of people's socks still see some kind of ladder, but it's completely gone. And I could not be happier about that. I've never liked the flaws in my own knitting. I accept them because I know I'm not perfect, but this is one thing I can conquer, and I have, and I'm pleased about that. Let me put my rather large sock back on. It's be difficult to put it on under my trousers. Excuse me. So that's the whips I've got going on. There is one other whip, but I'm going to talk about that at the end. So let's talk about FOs. Now you will remember, I'm sure, my allial hat, which is this boy here, the Helix knit hat with the 2 colours of neons and the crisscrossing, blah blah blah. You will also remember that I had decided to make a pair of socks on exactly the same pattern, and I had finished the first sock of the pattern last time I saw you, and I was working on the second. Now these, gosh, I love these slip stitch cables in 2 colours. Just absolutely beautiful. I cannot tell you how much I love it. Well, I have now completed the second sock, and I very deliberately wanted to reverse all the colours. So now I have, look at these. So you can see that the cables are entire mirror images of each other, and I've reversed the colours on the heels, the toes, and the cuffs as well. So they're fraternal twins, but not identical twins, and I love them. Love them, love them, love them. So I'm in the process of writing this pattern up for both the hat and the socks, and I think what I'll do is I'll release them separately, so that people who aren't interested in socks can just buy the hat and vice versa. But I will also, I think, have an ongoing discount for somebody who buys both together, so you're getting a slightly reduced rate. I think that's probably what I shall do. Usually when I release a new pattern, there's always some kind of discount on it anyway, that probably will still be the same case here, but I will keep them working as in tandem as a pair of patterns. So that's, I'm so happy with these, and I will obviously want to wear matching socks and hats all the time. Now this is the Uncommon Threads Tough Sock, never ending skeins of yarn. I mean, I have got so much out of these. Now I know there's less pink, that's because these cancel each other out in terms of usage, but there's more pink used in this one than there is yellow. But there's just so much of it left. I could probably make another sock. I might even be able to make another hat, I don't know. I can certainly use this for certain perfect accents in lots of different things. It's so bright, it makes me look very dark, and then it goes away and the light comes back on. So yeah, this has been really good value. It was 100 grams of pink and 100 grams of yellow, and it has just gone on and on and on. The skeins that really are the gift that keeps on giving. So I've loved working on those, and I look forward to getting a chance to photograph them properly. The hat pattern is ready to go. I just need to photograph it and get it tech edited. I've written that. I'm done with that, apart from any last minute corrections. The socks, I do need to spend a bit more time working on the pattern before I can release those, because I've only written up the size I've made, which is the 72 stitch sock. I need to work out the maths for an 80 stitch sock and a 64 stitch sock as well. So that could take a little bit more brain power than I have spare at the moment, so that may take me a little while. So that's the plan for the next couple of weeks, and that's my FOs. So I've got whips, a half object, and finished object, and that finally brings me on to the Christmas not a cal. The Christmas cast on that is not a cal. It kind of is a cal, but it's kind of not a cal. You'll remember that I encouraged everybody to send a photograph over the Christmas period into the Christmas cast on thread on my group on Ravelry of anything that you were casting on from Christmas Eve to January the 2nd, with a little photograph, hopefully in a Christmassy environment, so against your Christmas tree or something like that. Well, loads of you have done it. There's been such great level of engagement again. I don't know what it is about cals. Everyone loves a cal, don't they? Now, this is not a cal, but there is a prize, and I actually don't have the prize to hand with me. It's the beautiful set that SS, who is Crit Yum. I can't remember. I don't know how it's spelled, but SS, the beautiful see-through bag and needle case and notions pouch and all the rest of it, which I will show some photographs of when I edit this together just here. That's going to be a prize for somebody who has taken part in the Not-a-Cal. There's no real end in sight on this one. It's just I'm not going to administrate it like properly with like a finished object, so it's just a chatter thread that we can all have a lovely time doing it, and I will choose someone to win that, and maybe a couple of pounds as well at the end. It's going to be certainly going all the way through January, possibly into February as well, because I've cast on something for it myself. I only got in but the skin of my teeth on January the 2nd, because I didn't do any knitting at all. I was so busy over Christmas. Took my knitting away with me, didn't knit a stitch. Didn't really knit much between Christmas and New Year, but I'm making up for lost time now, which is great because I've got a bit more time on my hands. And you remember in Edinburgh last year, if you're watching history goes back that far, I bought this. I bought the kit for the Nahani River by Betts Lampers, and it's this wonderful Fair Isle. We call it a tank top, you call it a sweater vest in America. And it's so gorgeous, and it came as a kit with all the wool and the pattern that you need, not needles or anything, that's up to you. So I've got this bag of the Shetland, the Jameson Shetland Spindrift. Is it Spindrift? Yeah, it is, the Spindrift. All in the right colours. The navy, the browns, the greens, the avocado, it's not avocado, they call it artichoke. Everything to make up this rather fetching tank top, which I love. And I've started it. 9 months after I bought it, I've started it, and I'm making quite good progress. It's here. This is what I've got so far. Look at that. So having said that I wanted... Oh, losing some stitches, hang on. Having said that I wanted 2016 to be my year of stranded work, well, that didn't happen. I made the Paganino cowl, and I released that as a pattern, but obviously my mittens went nowhere, and they're still going nowhere. They're over there having time out. But this is the pattern, how it's growing at the moment. You can see it starts with a corrugated rib with 1, 2, 3, 4, there's like 5 colours in there that cycle through, and then you get into the main body of the pattern. And I have to say, I thought after the horror of my mittens that maybe stranded work wasn't for me. I'm really enjoying this. There's a lot. There's 338 stitches or something like that in a round, so it does take quite a while to get round, but I'm really rather enjoying it. There's a lot of colour changes. Every couple of rows you're changing colour, but I took some advice from people on the stranded the stranded group. There's some experts on Ravelry, and you know, if you don't know something, go to the experts. That's what I always say. And I said, what do you do with that? I mean, how do people weave in ends as they go? Is there a way of dealing with that? Because all the way up the side, it's going to be an enormous amount of ends. And a lot of people came back and said what they do is they spit splice. The advice I got was to knit to the end of the round and then mark the yarn where the end of the round is, so mark it where it finishes, and then go back 8 or 10 or 12 stitches, tink it back, so you know how much yarn you've got before you're going to get to that point. Cut it at that point and spit splice it with the next yarn. So there'll be maybe 2 stitches of marling where the 2 colours are blending together from the spit splice, but it means that there's no ends to weave in, and it's just so all the way up. It's hard to see from this one, but actually this lighter blue is changing colour all the time. There's 3 different colours of lighter blue and that darker background there. Can you see it's sort of brighter across the middle strip there? Hard to tell in this light, but it is. And so changing colours all the way through that section. No ends. I didn't do that with the corrugated ribbing. I just broke the ends, so I'll weave all those in later on. But I won't have to do that for the rest of it. I will be spit splicing, and it saves a lot of bother. You just sort of knit through the join and off you go, which is great. Now I'm really very, very happy with how my tension is progressing on this. I was very concerned after the debacle with my mittens that this was not going to be my fort. Rather than forte being Italian, fort being French for strength, rather than Italian loud. And it's all coming out quite evenly. I'm very much paying attention to yarn dominance and making sure that my foreground colour is always to the left of my background colour. I'm knitting with both yarns across one finger. If I can... I've done it again, I keep losing the stitch. If I can demonstrate that for you, how I tension is, so I make sure my motif colour, which in this case is the lighter colour, is to the left, and then I wrap the background colour around my little finger, I wrap the next colour around my second finger, and I tension the yarns over either side of my knuckle like that, so I can then knit with the navy blue or knit with the light blue, and that's how I do it. So for me that works very, very well. It's odd, I don't know why I don't get on very well with stranded work with the yarn in each hand, even though that's the only way I ever double knit, but for me it works much better to have both in the same colour. I think it's because I can get the same sort of tension across both sides more easily, and I am very... I keep dropping these stitches. I am very, very happy with how that's looking. It doesn't look like there's any puckering going on at all. None of the even where there's only one stitch, they're not disappearing. They're not hiding behind each other. All these little diagonal things. Very happy with that. And on the back, lost everything. Hang on. This needle's not quite long enough for doing this. But on the back, these are my floats that are all nice and loose, but not hanging floppy. I think I've sort of got there. The more I do of this, the easier it becomes, and the more I get into the flow of doing it and really enjoy the flow of doing it. Actually, that shouldn't be there. That should be over there. That should be there. And there we go. I'm really enjoying doing it. I only do sort of maybe 2 or 3 rounds at a time, and then I go to something a little bit easier. The pattern is the chart for the pattern is a 24 stitch repeat, but it's quite easy memorable. So when I look at the row I'm doing and I go, well, it's 4 of that one, 1 1 1 4, then 2 3 2 1 2 1 or something like that. So that's how I remember what I'm doing. I fix that little mantra in my head and go 4 1 1 1 4 2 3 2 1 1 2 1, and then keep repeating that in my head and just change colours where necessary. The fabric is so lovely. It's got that real Shetland density to it. Ben can't touch it. Ben can't come anywhere near it. But I am thoroughly loving it, and I think with a wash and a block, any little discrepancies in tension will even out quite nicely. My gauge is not the designer's gauge. I've always tended to be quite a tight knitter, and the sizes that the pattern comes in are a 39-inch chest, 42, 45 and 48. I have 42, so that was the size I wanted to make, and I did a gauge swatch. It was very good. I don't normally do this kind of thing, but I thought, well, this is a lot of hours is going to go into this. Steeking. There's steeks for the V neck and for the armholes as well, so I'm looking forward to all of that. And I my gauge was just so different, so much looser, and they're tiny needles anyway. This is 3.25s, and the ribbing is done with a 2.75, so I didn't really want to drop down needle size. I'd be working on like 1.75 and 2.5 for the main body of it. It would take forever. So actually what I've done is I've fudged things a little bit, and even though I don't want a 39-inch tank top, I am knitting the 39-inch size, but at a looser gauge. So with the gauge that I've got, I think it probably will be about 42 inches. So I think I'm so much looser. I've gained about 3 inches on the size of the original, but I think that's about right. I think it'll work. So I tend to be between 40 and 42. So I'm about at 41, I guess. So it'll be just about right. Fingers crossed. I do want to make a couple of modifications as I go on. I think this V-neck is a little bit too low, and in the pattern it says to start the V-neck and the armhole at the same time. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do prepare the steeks for the armholes and do a few more rows before I then start doing the neck decreases. I might have to change the frequency that I do the decreases in and keep going like that, but I'm hoping that will be easy to work out and all be enough. Now my husband is just crawling into the room. Hello, Ben. He's waving and grinning. He was actually crawling on his stomach to try and retrieve something. There's no way he would have been shot anyway, but too shy to say hello properly. So that is my Christmas cast on. I don't think there's a chance in hell that I will be able to finish this by the time I close everything up. It's getting very dark here. This has gone on for far too long, an hour and 46. So I will close everything down now. And I would say it's so delightful to be back. Thank you so much for staying with the podcast this long. I'm coming up for 2 years doing it now, and I'm still loving every second of it. I'm hoping this year, as I say, to invest more time in the knitting, so I would like to get my podcast out a little bit more frequently, but I'm not going to put too much pressure on myself for that. So hopefully it won't be too long before I see you, and there'll be progress on the Il Barato scarf. I'll have finished the sock, and I'll be working hard on the Nahani River, and maybe even going back to the piano number 3, which I'm looking forward to digging out of its bag over there, because it's calling to me a bit, and I can't wait to get started. So now, without further ado, although this episode is now a finished object, just remember, life is a work in progress. Just take it one stitch at a time. See you next time. Bye-bye.